It is 7 o'clock. We technically have a quorum,
Yeah,
so we could get started. And we'll just hopefully get the rest of our crew here. I know Jonathan and Jeremy both are aware that our meeting is at 7. So,
Okay.
so Kim, if you're ready, we'll proceed.
I'm ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening. This is the Great Barrington Planning Board meeting for Thursday, September 8th. This meeting is being recorded and is being held remote via Zoom. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's July 16, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body, this meeting of the planning board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so by following the instructions on the agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In addition, pursuant to section 241-1 of the town code, except for procedural and housekeeping matters, town residents shall have the right to address a board on any item that requires a vote at a time before a board vote on that item. Such residents will be allowed as much time as the proponents of an item is permitted to have. And the way that we're doing that is we keep an eye on hand raising that is occurring in the attendee block of names that we can see on the Zoom screen. So we'll start with a roll call attendance. Good evening, Jonathan. How was golf?
Good evening. It was fun.
And you are here?
Yeah.
Great.
Still in one piece. Yeah.
Malcolm, you're here?
I am.
Excellent. Pedro?
I'm here.
Excellent. Jeremy?
Muted.
Brandy is here, and when Jeremy unmutes himself, he'll be here as well. Jeremy, you there?
Here.
Hi, great, thank you. All right, we're all present and accounted for. First item of business Form A. So I don't believe we have any, Chris.
No.
Okay, great, thank you. We'll move on to minutes of August 25th, 2022.
Here.
Jeremy said he's here.
Excellent. So minutes of August 25th, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan. Malcolm, you look like you said
I'll
second.
second it.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Hearing none. Pedro, what's your vote?
Aye.
Malcolm, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jonathan, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jeremy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. And Brandy
Aye.
votes aye also. All right, great. Thank you. Moving into our next item, item number 3 is the preliminary plan review of Housatonic home ownership housing, North Plain Road, a review of preliminary engineering plans for the town of Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust, Central Berkshire Habitat for Humanity project at 0 North Plain Road, map 26, lot 53A. Good
Yes.
evening, everyone.
Brandy, tonight joining the board, we have the chairman of the Town's Affordable Housing Trust, Fred Clark.
Good evening, Fred.
Carolyn Valley is the executive director of our designated developer, Central Berkshire Habitat for Humanity.
Hi, Carolyn.
And Carolyn, I see Erin in the panelists or in the attendees too. I'll bring her in as a panelist. Erin O'Brien is a planner with Carolyn at Habitat for Humanity. And finally, the town's engineer for this work is White Engineering, represented here by Brent White.
Hi, Brent.
I think most of you are familiar with the site. This is up on North Plain Road at the kind of west end of Housatonic Main Street. It's a 7+ acre site, and Brent can go through the details of that. But just by way of introduction, and Fred and Carolyn, feel free to supplement my statement. The Affordable Housing Trust, with Jonathan's help, when he was on that trust, identified this site as a potential development site for affordable housing and was able to acquire it with Community Preservation Act funds. The trust now owns it. As I mentioned, Habitat is the designated developer. The goal here is to produce affordable homeownership units. Brent can give us a little bit of an idea of the site conditions, the location, the opportunities and constraints, et cetera, and his design approach. I'd like to sort of remind everybody that this is a preliminary review. This is not a permit set, although we have done a great deal of work in terms of the civil engineering that's needed to advance it to a permit set. We still are in a preliminary phase, hearing comments from the public and from hopefully some good constructive comments from you. I think the approach here is to use the PERD bylaw ultimately to permit the development. That's a select board special permit, but obviously the planning board is involved in preliminary reviews of the PERD and of ultimately the subdivision. So happy to be here in front of you, and I'll let Fred or Carolyn mention anything that might be relevant, or we can turn it right over to our engineer.
I'm fine to turn it right over to Brent.
Okay. Hi, Brent. Take it away for us, please.
Well, good evening. And first, I'd like to thank you all for your time this evening here. As Chris identified, this has been a great deal of work dating back to April of 2020, when I had first worked with Construct to do a feasibility study of this property to ultimately get to the point that we are here this evening. Again, as Chris also stated too, that this is really intended to piggyback on a neighborhood meeting that was had, I believe, on August 11th. In Housatonic with a number of neighbors to review the plans that you have before you this evening here. Again, we've gotten them far enough along to help us come up with quantities that we needed to support a MassWorks grant that would fund the infrastructure for this project, from preliminary site grading, everything through road, water, sewage, and drainage construction, as well as the actual house sites themselves here. We wanted to get the plans far enough along to feel confident enough as to what this project will look like, with feedback, certainly working with both Habitat and the members of the Affordable Housing Trust to achieve as many of their design options as the property would permit, while providing a certain level of density to make it a viable project. So with that, Chris, as a panelist, I should be able to share my screen, correct? Okay.
Yes, you should be able to.
He's muted.
Okay. I still find myself tripping up on Zoom, so let's skip this. Here we are. Is that PDF plan set visible for you? Okay, so this was electronically submitted to the board last week, and also hard copies given as well. Try and zoom enough. I apologize. I don't see how large this is on your screen here, but again, just for locus, the center of the plan here is North Plain Road, Route 41. We are just northwest of the intersection of Main Street that leads to the center village of Housatonic, and our parcel is over here off to the left. Currently, the site, if you were to visit the property, you would access it through an old wood road. If you were to follow my cursor along this bubble cloud here, that's a generous description of the entrance that we have currently, but that is really our existing condition. As you can note from the topographic survey, we have a fairly gentle topography. We do have some elevation change here as we go towards the northern portion of the property here, but overall a relatively easy site to work with. And as I scroll down here to our proposed conditions, try to make this a little neater here. There's a number of items I'd like to identify as a part of this. The first thing that we had identified and noted in our feasibility report here is where the current wood road is, where my cursor is now. Sorry for all those yellow blocks. You can certainly pull a truck in and out of that location, but it is by no means an ideal location for a curb cut as it relates to sight lines along North Plain Road based on its location here. So by shifting the curb cut, I found the highlight function is almost better to use during a presentation. By shifting the curb cut where you see my cursor here. This moves us about 8 to 10 feet higher in actual elevation. It gives us much clearer visibility for anyone entering or exiting this driveway to the north along North Plain Road. At the current curb cut location, looking to the south, there's really no issues, but looking to the north, it becomes challenging in terms of seeing any oncoming traffic that would be coming in the southerly direction from the north towards the center of downtown Great Barrington. So the first thing we thought was, in order for this site to be feasible here, we needed to relocate what the main point of entry and entrance will be. To do so, we also thought that, frankly, getting further away from the intersection of Main Street and North Plain Road would be a positive element of that as well. The road grades as we come in throughout the site here. Just follow this. I know the line works difficult to see on the PDF, but we've designed our road loop here. Really, it will be able to accommodate the largest fire truck the town has. We've been able to model that in AutoCAD based on similar projects that we've brought before the town over the last 5 years. So we feel comfortable that the road network that we've laid out here will give us the ability to maneuver any apparatus the town has on the property itself. And by placing the houses in the road in the way that we have, we've tried to take advantage of the greatest benefit from a potential cut and fill on the site. Rather than setting it too low or too high here, we've been able to work the grade coming off North Plain Road. I don't think at any point we exceed 5 or 6% of the road grade there. So we're able to do that with gentle grades within the road, and then again, maneuver a road throughout the site. One of the goals too was to, as much as we could, decentralize parking. We didn't want to have one location with a 20 or 30 lot 20 space parking lot here and have everyone walk to their homes here. So we've tried to space out the parking as close as we could to the units, while also being respectful of our buffers to our neighboring properties. Ultimately, we're looking to propose 19 standalone single family homes on the site here, and Carolyn and Fred can speak more about the apportionment of the number of 3 or 4 bedroom houses with the feedback that was received during the design process from I'll call it the start of 2020 through April here, that really kind of evolved into what you see before you here this evening. One of the benefits of this site is we are served by the Housatonic Water Company, so there is municipal water available, or a public water supply, pardon me, available to the site itself. That is certainly of great assistance. And the other is the fact that while not immediately in front of our property here, through the use of a low pressure grinder pump station, we will be able to collect sewage from the site and pump and connect just further down Main Street, approximately 600 feet or so east of the view of North Plain Road that you see here, into an existing sewer manhole here. The nice thing about the low pressure grinder station is that allows for frankly less expensive equipment overall, less potential odor issues from as compared to a more conventional high pressure sewage pump station. The other benefit of that is that it allows for more, I'll call it later date additions to that system. If the town were ever to undertake an expansion of the sewer beyond this property here, it's much easier for a tie-in of the line that we're going to put in as a part of this project, utilizing a low pressure system as compared to a high pressure. And there'd really be 3 points of access to be able to do that. Certainly to the north along North Plain Road, from the south along North Plain Road, and then what we've shown on here diagrammatically. I don't know that we'll actually record this, or certainly not record it without any further feedback from the town and neighbors, is the idea we've laid out our buildings in a way where we could provide a sewer easement, I'll call it somewhat cross country, through our property to get to our one of our pump stations that we intend to serve the site with. So again, in terms of the ability to accommodate the neighborhood here, those are the accommodations that we've made on our site. I don't know that it would be as practical to put a sewer easement on the northern end of the property. It appears we would have the space to do so, but obviously anything along that line would also involve cooperation between the town and those direct abutting properties. One of the other benefits of this site is it's fairly well draining soils. In terms of stormwater infiltration, capturing, peak flow management here. We intend to use a series of deep sump catch basins to a proprietary storm scepter, again, to achieve our total suspended solids removal, and then ultimately infiltrate that water in the ground And really what's left as a result of this product is we have single family homes spread throughout the site. And then really, in my view, you have basically essential green here for everyone to enjoy. I can imagine you'd have a pretty decent soccer game on the space that would be left here. But again, it'd be a chance for everyone in that area to enjoy open space. And really, to accommodate that, I know one of the goals of many sections of your bylaw here is to preserve mature trees. I would say a majority of the tree removal that's going to occur on this site is very low value scrub brush. There are some trees that certainly will come out as a part of this here, but we're not cutting in and cutting mature oaks or cherry trees in order to accommodate this. So I think really at the end of the day, and it's well detailed in the feasibility study that we had done here, it's our goal that through the work that we've done so far and with your feedback, that ultimately this is a product that will receive support and meet the special permit finding criteria that ultimately the Board of Selectmen will vote on. That's the elevator pitch, I guess. I'm certainly happy to get into more specific details or comments that you have, and we'll just defer to Carolyn or Fred if they have any last comments they'd like to make before we take your feedback. Our goal ultimately is in a rather short timeline here between your feedback this evening, hopefully a definitive answer on the MassWorks grant, that ultimately this product will go through the plan unit residential development section of the bylaw here. Our intention is to meet with the new DPW director and fire chief once we've factored into your comments, and then hopefully in short order be back before you in a more formal process that's associated with the PERD special permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Brent, may I just ask before you turn it over for more information from Carolyn, can you, just for the board's benefit, just describe a little bit more any particular physical site characteristics that led to this layout that we should be aware of that have informed this configuration?
I would certainly say in terms of where the driveway is going to be located here, we felt that was kind of the optimal location in terms of getting to the highest elevation while maximizing our distance away from our northern abutter. I would say that was certainly a priority. Yeah, the orientation of the road coming down here, obviously we do, that's the really the steepest part of the property along the roadway alignment there. So that's why we brought the roadway somewhat into the southwest of the property here versus a perfect 90-degree off of North Plain Road. We are also trying to ensure that we had enough room for this. Try and use different colors. So the parking areas that we've identified here, those are subject to a side setback off of the property boundary here. So having parking in this area was a priority to ensure we could accommodate the first 3 homes that you see here identified. In terms of balancing the overall cut fill here, the goal was to keep the road as tight as we could. If we could get away with a smaller road loop, we could. But I think when you look at just unfortunately we don't have a perfectly square property here. We do have a fairly irregular shape between a rather narrow frontage that widens as we come into the property. So we've tried to maximize that while also frankly providing enough road length to accommodate the parking, the houses, and the driveways for 19 single-family homes on the property, as well as open space for people to enjoy, while really trying to keep the houses themselves as central to the property as well, to maintain as much of a maximum buffer around really all 4 sides of the product itself.
Okay, thank you very much, Brent.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
So if I could add just a little bit of the other, how did we get here? We started with this project. I thought I was.
Yes, you are. I just
Okay.
prompting you to identify yourself.
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Carolyn Valley, CEO. Thank you, Chris. What got us to this design was multiple listening sessions with the abutters, with people from Housatonic, with existing Habitat homeowners, to find out what is it they would want in a neighborhood. And what we heard over and over again from the abutters, they wanted to make sure there was a lot of buffer zone around the project. They did not want more units than, initially we had hoped to get to 20 units. So they did not want to have more than that. And they wanted to make sure that they could, if they needed to in the future, be able to tie into the sewer line, but would not be required by the town to do that. So in the course of all of these listening sessions, we wrote down all of those things and tried to incorporate that. And the next phase that we'll be doing is having meetings with people that work in Great Barrington in particular, that we hope will be the people that want to buy these homes, to get more ideas about family size and things like that, because we can adjust for, we have quite a few 4 bedrooms. If it turns out we only need 3 bedrooms, we'll make that adjustment. We have a separate committee that's looking at solar. So the orientation of the houses will change based on what the findings are for solar in order to be able to get the maximum usage on that. I know that some folks don't really like the parking that much. Brent is open to hearing what you guys have to say about that and being able to make some modifications on it. But the central green came up over and over again of having people wanted their porches to face forward, to be able to build a community, to have their kids being able to play in that green space, and to really, be a part of a community rather than just a single family home that, anybody could be in. So that's all. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
And if I may just add to that, I think one item you might get some feedback on that just reminded me with respect to the sewer. I was hoping I might take a minute just to elaborate on that further.
Please.
So the sewer, it's been a hot topic, good and bad, depending on what your opinion on the matter is. And our priority was to certainly design this in a way that would accommodate the product and have the ability to be added upon here. One of the greater concerns, I think Carolyn can elaborate on more, that they heard during the meeting last month, was with respect to, if this goes in, this is going to be next to my property, are we required to tie in here? So with respect to this, septic system design and installation is governed under Title V. It's the Massachusetts State Sanitary Code. So anything to do with septic systems falls under Title V and the jurisdiction of the Board of Health. And in this case here, Title V would say if there is a municipal sewer connection available to you, especially if your system fails a Title V inspection, you are required to connect. I think the benefit of this project here is the way that the sewer line would be ran here is I don't think there's any homeowners that would even be required to tie into this who aren't already connected to sewer, should they have this issue. The other thing is, frankly, the town will own the sewer line. So I think in terms of the overall element of this here is just because sewer is on the street, many times I've been hired by private property owners to identify that it is not practical to tie into the sewer, or that tying into the sewer, while maybe possible from an engineering standpoint, is cost prohibitive, and boards of health are receptive to that. So for residents along North Plain Road who are concerned, now there's going to be a section of North Plain Road that has sanitary sewer available to it that is connected to the municipal system. That in and of itself is in no way an obligation for you to connect to the actual sanitary sewer itself. If anything, I would expect you probably hear more people who are interested in connecting than not. But I just thought, in terms of trying to assuage any concerns here, that if this is constructed the way that we've shown here, that people, 100 people are going to get a certified letter from the town saying you have to connect the sewer. That's just not the reality of that. And certainly happy to work with the town to help better educate or provide information to support making that information more clear. Because I could, as a homeowner, I could certainly understand especially if I've just invested $10,000, $20,000 in a new septic system, and then something completely out of my control happens, and now I'm going to have another unfunded mandate. That's not going to be the case with the sewer system.
And Brent, just for those of us who are sewer nerds, can you just describe how this system's working? Is it a grinder pump in each of the residences and is providing the pressure, or is it gravity flow like most of the houses in Great Barrington to this pump station?
Sure. So in this case here, it'll be gravity flow from the homes to a gravity collection system within the roads. And then we've got two E1 low pressure grinder pump stations. And those are, for those who are familiar with a number, for instance, the Beechwood community in pretty much the eastern and southern side of Stockbridge Bowl is all on E1 low pressure grinder pump stations. We designed a private system for residents on Bramble Lane, on Laurel Lake and Lennox and Lee. So it's a very tried and true system and vendor that has worked throughout Berkshire County with great success with our firm and other engineers who've worked with them. Town of Stockbridge, for instance, the pump stations. If individual properties were required to have them, they'd have the same ones that are the town spec in Great Barrington and Stockbridge. So that's really the nice thing about that, though, is as a part of the overall model. And Carolyn can speak to this more here in terms of shared costs. Obviously, in this case, I think ultimately the town of Great Barrington takes ownership of this. But whether it was the town that took ownership of it or the homeowners association that would be established here, having communal pump stations generally are much easier and less of a burden for each individual homeowner to maintain versus having 19 or 20 individual grinder pump stations. On an initial upfront cost basis, could that possibly result in a lower fee? It may, but that would greatly reduce or almost eliminate the ability for any sort of expansion or connection to this line going forward here. So I think the way that we've done this is try to, based on the topography, based on what we're trying to do in terms of leaving the door open for connection to this at a later date. The low pressure grinder pumps gives us the greatest flexibility while minimizing the obligations on the individual homeowner in the development served by that.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Fred has his hand raised, Brandy.
I'm sorry, I can't see Fred. Fred, did you want to tell us a little bit more about?
I do. This is Fred Clark. I'm the current chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. And I'm kind of backing up to say that the habitat was selected in a competitive RFP that we put out from the town of Great Barrington. And during that process of writing the RFP to seek proposals to develop this, the Affordable Housing Trust had a number of meetings. And we came up with a bunch of project goals, things like that, things that you've already heard, such as green space is a priority, a buffer between the neighborhood and the current development, stormwater management all on site. In addition, one of the things that was important to me was that the town accept the road and the road become a town road to be maintained and plowed. And of course, obviously to have fire truck turning radiuses as required by your code. So all of those things you've heard already, but they come basically as part of the RFP. They're the project goals that we said. We also talked, although we did not specify the exact number of houses to be created. And I think that there's a certain matrix that one could put together of more units or less units, which are balanced from the infrastructure costs, the ability to sell them, the ability to fit them into a road, things like that, that fit in. And I think that Carolyn and Brent and their team have done a very good job of balancing those project goals and the realities of the site, the limitations and the benefits of the site.
Fred, can you comment at all how the density of this parcel would compare to the existing neighborhood density if it's built out as shown in the plans that we've received?
I'm not sure that I have the ability to do that. Most of this area, I believe, some of Housatonic is half-acre zoning. I believe this area was developed under a 1 acre zoning.
No, well, it's currently R1A. It's 10,000 square feet per lot.
10,000 square feet.
Brent, did you guys run through an analysis of density, permissible density?
Oh, we did, and this will comply with that. I was trying to see if I could get an answer to Jonathan's question more directly.
Okay.
This is Chris. The existing zoning is, as Jonathan said, R1A, quarter acre lots. I'm not sure that is actually the built pattern on the ground. There are lots on Wyantinock Street and Linda's Lane that are smaller, that may be in fact quarter acre. There's a number that are larger. You know, just doing the math on this 7-acre site, obviously you could fit a great number of units or lots. In this case, I think while the site is very suitable to development, you know, putting the road in, putting infrastructure in, et cetera, and accounting for the strangely shaped lot, and also accounting for the fact that there's just really one sort of leg for frontage to North Plain Road. There's not another way out. You know, you either have a few little cul-de-sac roads or one loop road with a common green. And I think that was ultimately the goal of the Affordable Housing Trust. And that's, I think, the concept that's presented here is a common green with the houses around it. The density, I think, speaks to the site suitability, the site characteristics, the amount of infrastructure that can go in there, and also ultimately what we think we can afford to build and what Habitat for Humanity thinks they will be able to market and sell to through their programs.
And just to get back here, so based on the 19 units, we'd be just over 16,000 square foot per unit as it's laid out currently here. And the nice thing about the PERD in terms of an attempt to increase the density is that allows us to have 3,300 square foot per unit as the minimum requirement, whereas we'd have to have 10,000 square feet beforehand. So we've tried to balance obtain greater density in a way that accommodates the site configuration while also preserves green space in the center of the property and maximum buffer around the perimeter.
But Brent, your simple calculation doesn't take into consideration site circulation, public roadways, parking areas, stormwater and setback areas.
It was just a pure back of the envelope acreage divided by units. That's all.
You know, I think that there's a balance between the built space versus the open space, because you start to get less permeability. You know, the greater you do it, and then you start to have a bigger stormwater management area, and there's sort of a balance that needs to be achieved between those things.
Yeah, that's the reason for my question, was really just to inform both the board and anyone who's participating from the public about what your process was in assessing the characteristics of the site and looking at the zoning and then coming up with a proposed development pattern, recognizing it is a balancing act. You know, I think our board has traditionally been very supportive of housing efforts, and there is significant demand for housing in the community. And so this is great in terms of the gap it will fill. I think some of us are optimistic that there could have been more lots, but you know, it's important for us to hear what your rationale is in coming up with this development proposal. So thank you. Okay, so board members, do we want to go back to having either Brent or Chris share the plan? Do we have some initial concepts or questions about parking? I for one, have a question about the parking and whether or not we can just do small parking courts in front of the units as opposed to these larger parking areas that extend behind the units. Seems like you could potentially save on impervious, and I wondered if you'd studied that, Brent.
I'll actually let Carolyn and Fred take the lead on that, because we actually had some back and forth based on feedback from existing homeowners as well as future homeowners as to their preferences on parking. So I'll let them explain in greater detail what the feedback was that they received that drove us to coming up with this layout.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Fred, you're muted if you're responding.
I think there's a general preference to have the parking behind the actual unit itself. I mean, that was the driving characteristic behind that here. But I don't know if Carolyn or Aaron, if you had any more that you wanted to elaborate as having had those more detailed discussions.
I mean, I can address that. Part of the desire was to not have parking barriers between the houses to, again, create this community effect. We have had discussions about whether or not carports would be something. But we don't have a clear, we've talked to a lot of people and it's not like there's no like clear preference either way. So that is something that is probably still on the table a little bit. And I think as we're looking at what the angle of each house is, we would probably look at the parking as well.
Yeah, I wonder if you could do something more similar to the parking configuration you have between units 6 and 7, where, there's sort of some shared spaces. Looking at several of the houses, it seems like that could potentially be done, even if you had a driveway and then it sort of like forked like this and you had 2 parking spaces that pointed towards each house. We've struggled as a board to really like find the right balance between having an adequate number of parking spaces and not over parking a space. But this is a two-way street, right, Brent?
Absolutely, no, and that's why we kind of got the plans as far as we have here to understand that frankly, if any of those types of changes were to be made here, that may have an impact on grading, final structure placement, inverts, things to that effect here. I think the benefit of the site is we do have some flexibility to adjust that here, and I think the goal is just to ensure that in working with our partners between the trust and the feedback that we received here, that we're trying to find that balance of ensuring we're providing a product that people want to buy into, but also satisfying our obligations under the special permit finding criteria.
Right, okay.
I want to say that I'm not personally in favor of the parking courts behind the units. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I think people being people, they're always going to park in the easiest, quickest place where it's close to the door so that they can bring things in. I right near me here is Bernard Feinson Flag Rock Village. And I think the townhouses there on the road are about the same spacing, about the same density. And if you look at how the parking works for the majority of those, they're in between the units or in little parking areas in front. And they become basketball courts, they become, tricycle operator places, as well as, people parking their cars in a most convenient way so that they can take their groceries in.
Other board members, does anyone have any questions or comments for the applicant? Malcolm, I see you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I was struck by the same thing, by just the size of the impervious area dominated by the parking driveways and the parking spaces, bigger than the houses. I mean, it's much bigger than the houses. And I would urge urge them to design parking that doesn't require as much impervious space there in the long driveways.
Thanks, Malcolm. I made a note of that.
Let's see, any other board members? Jonathan, did you have any?
Yeah, I have more than they want to hear, I'm sure.
Probably. Can you be measured?
I'll try.
Okay.
I mean, first of all, the question is, why is this a PERD? It really is a subdivision. Secondly, this is suburban sprawl, which we have surrounding it. But why, when one of the key issues with affordable housing is finding someplace to build it, and here's this perfect site, and we're limiting it to 19 units, which is insane because it could easily support 40 to 60 units. And the way you're doing it, you're precluding any future development. So, I mean, there's so many things wrong with this. I'll try to address a few of them. First of all, the way you've got it set up is the kids in the houses have to cross a road to get to the playing field. That makes no sense. The houses should be on the field, and the road should be outboard of the houses, and the parking should be between the road and the houses, and it should be just head-in parking. And you would save a lot of impervious material. And, the idea of a PERD is that you can cluster houses. That's why we have the PERD. So, and if you look at cluster communities, they're wonderful to live in, and the people it's a real community. This is suburban. This is not a cluster. And this is not going to build a community the way you're missing an opportunity to build a community here, which is really sad because these things don't come along very often. I could go on, but I'll stop.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. Carolyn, can you just clarify for us in terms of the land ownership structure? Is there an intention that there would be land ownership with this? How does your structure work?
Right now, we're looking at a community land trust for the property so that it would be managed by the homeowners association. And that way we'll have maintenance by that as well. And we did that for a couple of reasons. And I don't know the answer, Jonathan, that you had asked why it was a PERD and not the other thing. Maybe Brent, you could respond to that.
I can address at least a couple of those comments.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, first, just the PERD, frankly, gives us a greater opportunity for density than the underlying zoning. I mean, that's just the mechanics of the bylaw here to get to the point raised with respect to road configuration.
Hang on one second, Brett. Are you aware that you can build 3 families by right on a 10,000 square foot lot?
And not only that, John, but if you were to subdivide this, you can get 19 lots.
Easily.
Well, maybe this is Chris, maybe this is, the type of lot or the type of home being considered, I think, has a lot to do with Habitat's experience. And, if they felt that a two-unit residential home could sell, that somebody in an affordable, in a moderate or low income situation could purchase that and be a landlord and rent the other unit. There's all sorts of complications there, which I'm sure
You
Habitat
can build a
could.
2-family that's owned by 2 families. Come on. It doesn't have to be a landlord.
Yep.
They built multifamily housing in Pittsfield.
Yep. So thank you. So Habitat has gone through a number of different models in different communities, Pittsfield included. And I think in this case, Carolyn, you've done some work here, and you have a model in mind that you think can work here.
Yeah, that would be correct. One of the things that we find is that many people purchasing their first home really aren't too keen on having no control over who lives next to them. The hardest units for us to sell are the 2-unit condos, unless it's family members that go in. We just sold 2, or they'll be closing in the next few days. And fortunately, they were related. And we had a very, very difficult time getting applications for people that want to buy it. They've had negative experiences with having, other rentees that they didn't have control over. I mean, I've been with Habitat for 15 years. I've overseen the condo associations where they're 2-unit ones, and it oftentimes is a nightmare. We are having to go in and be a mediator because oftentimes it's just not a model that a lot of people want. I think many people would not be opposed if they could buy a duplex where they could have income property coming in on it. But unfortunately, we heard very strongly from the abutters and the neighbors that they do not want rental units there at all. So we really try hard, and that's why we do these listening sessions, is to honor what the people that currently live there want to see, where we don't just shove what we'd like into the project. We listen very carefully and try to design based on what we hear.
Carolyn, have you seen an opportunity to do a 2-family unit where there's not a shared party wall, where you're listening to your neighbor all the time, but maybe shared through a carport or some structure that, would lend more privacy. Again, we are really supportive of seeing more density in general in the community, and we've been trying to address zoning hurdles to creating housing opportunity. And so I'm just curious if you could inform us as to what models you maybe tested on this site, just so we understand your process a little better.
We had reached out to some other habitats that have similar sites, and many kind of just explained the same thing. Now, I did not look at any where they had like a carport separating the two houses. So that's something I would go back to Brent and see, based on what we can build on, whether that would be an option. And then one of the things that we could do, just like we had some house designs that we had people give us feedback on, we could also make that part of our same query questions when we're going out to people that would be the ones buying this, and ask them that question. So since we're still in the getting feedback stage, if we started hearing, yes, we definitely want this, we would be able to amend the plan to reflect that. At the end of the day, I do have to be able to sell these at an affordable price and make sure that we have a market that wants to buy them.
And in that same vein, is there opportunity, not to turn all 19 into duplexes, but maybe, a small percentage, like, 10% or 15%, something that gets us a little bit more density? It looks like I'm just looking at the aerial image from Mass Mapper, that the house sizes in the existing neighborhood vary, very, very significantly, from, kind of modest cottages to substantially larger structures. So it seems like the existing development pattern might support a little variation in size of footprint, which may make it less suburban, to Jonathan's point.
We certainly will look at that. The other thing that we do have to be conscious of is DHCD gives us the minimums that we have to meet in order to make the requirement. So that is something that went into calculations as well.
Could you explain that?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, depending on how many bedrooms you're going to have, the DHCD tells you what the minimum square footage of a home can be. So,
really?
And they're actually larger than what my normal habitat home is. So I've been having a little bit of a personal struggle with that, because every square foot costs money. So when I'm running those calculations, especially in this construction environment, it does make it more challenging. But I will be happy to get that. And I just saw from Erin's note to me that she was going to put it on the question list for when we're meeting with potential purchasers. So thank you for offering that suggestion.
I think that dovetails well in terms of the discussion of are there opportunities to revisit the parking scheme as it relates to the buildings itself. Just the one technical point I did want to get to Jonathan's question with respect to the houses on the interior of the road. From a design standpoint, I think on the south side and southwest side, that would probably that could potentially work. I am a little concerned based on just the topography here. If we were to extend the road out much further to the north on the property here, I do think we start to have more challenges in just the actual profile of the road and the relationship between the house sites and cut fills. But that's certainly something we'll be discussing.
Pedro, I don't think we've really heard much from you. Do you have any comments or suggestions? You're muted.
Jeremy has his hand up, actually.
Okay, I'm sorry, Jeremy. I didn't see that. I need to scroll my.
I can turn this off so more people can see screens and then pull it back up if you'd like.
Okay, appreciate it. Pedro, were you going to say something?
Well, I just, I'll reiterate Jonathan's point about, I think it's for all of us involved in this type of work, development work, it's imperative that we start to rethink the way that the car dominates our lives. And if you really want that thing to be a center green, that road can't be anywhere near it. It just doesn't work that way. So I totally agree with what John said there. My point about getting 19 lots in here is that Brent keeps saying that they chose the PERD because it allows more density, but they're basically building to the minimum density that they could even do if they were to subdivide the entire property. So the PERD really doesn't make any sense. And then, I'm thinking if one of these homeowners suddenly, is able to build an ADU or wants to add something to their building, like how would they do that with relation to the ownership if they were lots, split up into lots, and obviously that would be solved. I'm wondering too if there's some kind of fix to Housatonic water, because it seems to me like connecting this project to Housatonic water is just not very smart.
Gonna be town water someday.
I think that's a significant and yet separate issue. I don't disagree with you that it's definitely challenged, but
I'm sympathetic to listening to the neighborhood and the rest of it, but in reality, if this thing were split up into 19 lots, we're looking at close to, as Jonathan said, 60 units that could potentially go here, and it really should be a baseline for the development. It is, and he's right too to say that these kinds of projects and this type of land and this type of opportunity comes around, maybe even once in a lifetime.
I just one comment to respond to that, and I respect the comment. There's certain truth to it here, and I think we're trying to find the balance of what our future homeowner will be, what they're looking for here. The other thing that I just think is worth noting is the property did sit on the market, and a number of private developers did explore the property, did look at the infrastructure costs. We helped some people actually look at what the sewer connection and other things would be, and nobody wanted that. So I think that we should at least acknowledge the fact that it was available to the open market for a great period of time. And I have also seen throughout Berkshire County a number of these subdivisions, minimal lot configurations that have been approved, endorsed either by special permit or by a Form A subdivision, and they're going back and merging the lots because they can't sell them at that density. So I think that's at least important to know. We take the feedback here with respect to trying to achieve greater density or modifications to the site layout here, and appreciate that. But I just, in defense of the scheme that we have here and everything that's gone into the history of this property, I think that's worth noting as well.
yeah, I hear you. And I think that's why we wanted you to frame up what some of the challenges are on the site so that we understood, the process you went through in finding the site's characteristics and, balancing the site's characteristics with the costs of development. But I would really strongly urge you, Carolyn, as you're exploring the ownership structure, if you could find a way to not preclude the future addition of ADUs. I think even if that requires that little extra footprints be defined, just as young families turn into older couples and the kids leave, they may want additional income. The parents may want to move into an ADU and the kids be able to take over the house. So, if we limit ourselves too much now, I think it speaks to the loss of opportunity that some of us see this parcel having.
Thanks.
Can I make one last comment?
Sure,
Brett,
and then I want to get to Jeremy.
When I look at the topography, it seems to rise, in both directions. It kind of comes to a low point in the center of the site. So moving the road to the north, I'm not sure why that would. If you could explain why you think that would be a problem, because if it is, then moving the road to the south would be a problem as well.
I just think, frankly, my thoughts on that were one, in terms of really, in order to make as you have the entrance drive coming from North Plain into the property here, how much cutting that road, in terms of how it impacts the density there, I would just, my first review of that suggestion, that was a concern. I'm never one to make a judgment in a hearing to say something, or a discussion that something could or couldn't be done there, but that was just one of our concerns. And in terms of, I think Karen and Aaron can talk to this too, I think we did hear directly from some of our northern abutters here with greater concerns in terms of the proximity of any element of our project to theirs, whether it be parking or road here. So again, what you see here this evening was kind of our best first cut at taking into account all of the input from the neighborhood here. And really, this is our opportunity to hear your feedback and make adjustments accordingly.
If I could just
I will
pause
do
for
that
a second, I got a text message saying that there's an audio problem. I'm curious if one of the members in the public, if you could just raise your hand if there is an audio problem. So Eileen, I see you have an audio problem. Is anyone else experiencing that?
No.
I hear fine.
Okay. Okay. Eileen has her hand raised. I'd really like to get to Jeremy, Eileen, and then we'll come to you.
Is it an audio? Is it just a point of order, Randy? Why don't we see if Eileen knows what's happening here? Can you speak, Eileen, on your phone?
Not if it's muted.
She's
I went
unmuted.
on, so I'm okay. I did miss a few minutes, but that's all of a sudden the audio stopped. I
Okay.
don't know what my computer or what, but I thought I'd better tell you in case.
Okay. You can hear everything now, though.
Yeah, I'm on
Okay.
by telephone.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right, so Jeremy, then Malcolm.
So I just so in planning this, do you have like estimated HOA fees that this plan is going to generate, and also if those are going to be sustainable and to be able to support the continued maintenance of this site? And then also too, I'm wondering about talks with the town. That is this a pretty sure thing that the main part of the road is going to be a town road?
What do you mean
That's-
main part, Jeremy? Can you clarify
Well,
that?
I mean, the
it's a
road
loop
and the
road,
loop.
so the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean the
Yeah.
road in the loop, because I mean, if it's not a town road, it seems like between 19 units, this is a lot of infrastructure to be able to support over the long haul, because these are affordable units in perpetuity. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And so the concern I have is that what the HOA fees are going to look like at the start, and then also what they'll look like over time.
With the MassWorks grant, the town actually owns the road. So my understanding is that they would be maintaining it. And I think that's something Fred said at the top of the
Yeah,
presentation.
that's what I was wondering. And then,
Yeah.
so the thing I had questions about is the parking as it's proposed. It seems like it's a lot to maintain. And is that the association that will be maintaining all of those, or will that be maintained by the two, like the way that the units are set up? So like one parking area for those two units maintained by them, or by the association, or all of them collectively by the association?
Usually every time we start with a group of homeowners associations, they have that discussion and they vote on how they want to do it. In my 15 years of being here, they've all chosen to maintain it themselves. So there's some things that in one unit that there's some extensive rain gardens and stuff, and they've chosen to have that maintained by an outside landscaping company. But in terms of their driveways and stuff, they take care of that themselves.
Oh, okay. Terrific. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Malcolm?
Yeah, I have a question about, the town owns the property now, right?
Correct. It's owned by
Who's
the
gonna-
trust.
Who is going to own the property when this is done?
It's not totally figured out, Fred, sorry, or Carolyn. But Carolyn mentioned the community land trust model. The Affordable Housing Trust could in fact be the owner of the land in perpetuity.
Do our bylaws allow development of an ADU in this kind of development? The building of an ADU in this kind of development?
Well, if they build to a PERD, then it's subject to the PERD, so they can,
Yeah,
build another unit if they have the 3,300 available. The
They'd
problem
have-
is who's going to own it. I assume
they'd have
it's
to
gonna
come
be the
back to
person.
the select board though to get a modification of the PERD
Right.
agreement.
Right.
which would not have to happen with
Yeah.
a subdivision.
Right, I mean,
Right.
yeah, so okay, that was my question.
So,
Um,
Chris, real quick, if it's subdivided, the town would own the road in that way, right? Because they'd have to create a road.
Well, in either case, a
either
PERD will
case,
have to
okay.
create a road or a subdivision. And it'll be up to, if it's engineered and built to the town's subdivision standards, then the town can accept and own and maintain the road.
And if it were subdivided, there could still be a large portion of the land, say the buffer and any sort of awkward little angles of the property held in common, right?
Yes, and Carolyn, I guess maybe this is a question for you. I want to tease out this idea of subdivision a little bit, if we could. If a road could be designed and 19, 20 individual or more individual properties, individual lots be created through a subdivision, are people you work with, potential homeowners, are they less willing to or more willing to take on a property that also has a lot, like a 10,000 square foot, quarter acre lot? Or is the preference just to have the footprint of the house and for an association to own the rest of the land? I mean, I think that may be an important question when we're talking about a subdivision versus a PERD.
So a couple of things, and one of the reasons that we were looking at having a land trust is how do we get these to be affordable for people and to be able to, and one of the biggest, well, now with the interest rates going up, that's changed. But at one point, the taxes on the property were going to be more than what the principal and interest payments were going to be. So by having it in a land trust that's held by a nonprofit, then you would not have to pay taxes on the land, you'd be paying taxes on your property, thereby making it able to be more affordable to more people. So the more cost, which is also land, that goes into it, makes it where the cost goes up to the homeowner in terms of payment. So, I mean, that's something Brent and I can talk about, but that is something that I'm concerned about. In the 15 years that I've been with Habitat, we've only had one person that actually even built a garage on their property. So I understand the thought process of having an ADU, but we're talking about trying to get people into housing that would not be able to afford to purchase a home without this kind of project. So if they were to do an ADU, it would be so far down the line that, we could probably come back and do something in the future.
It
And
seems
Carolyn,
like, it seems like, that the alternate ownership arrangement then is key. And I'm happy to tease this out, or anybody can suggest anything, but maybe the land trust, and I say land trust because that's the term you're using, but I think that it can be one and the same as the housing trust, can function in that way, owns the land and the roads, for example, and the common facilities, and, in a sense has a master deed on each of the individual, let's say there's individual 19 or 20 lots. And then each resident has a 99-year lease, which is essentially a purchase. Is that just a crazy legal structure? Does that even work? Is that a way to get to a typical subdivision model that's been mentioned here while still achieving this common ownership structure?
I would probably go back to the attorney and talk to them about that?
Sorry, yeah.
That sounds like one of
Yeah,
those
so-
legal things that I'm not familiar with. And then, of course, Brent would also have to give me guidance from his
Well,
perspective on that as well.
I think there's a higher level, and I go back to this as my former role as just a member of the board of directors for Habitat, was in terms of as we develop, from everything from taking over just a rehab of a single family home, a rehab of a duplex, converting it to condos and selling that out here. One of the things that we were always challenged with in terms of learning from those who came before us here was we and whatever development we're undertaking is we don't want to set people up for failure. And one of the things that some of my predecessors found was they built these single family homes, did a beautiful job, turned it over, and people felt, going from living in an apartment or sharing a duplex to all of a sudden now you're responsible for shoveling your driveway, cutting your grass, taking your trash out once a week. There's no landlord to call anymore here. That to Carolyn's point, the association and the condo situations or Habitat as an organization as the primary note holder had to go in and help rectify situations for homeowners who were basically a little out over their skis in terms of going from apartment living to all of a sudden not just having their own structure, but their own property to maintain as well. So the HOA to a certain degree serves as a backstop of trying to eliminate that here. But we're certainly happy to explore from the layout that you see here, if we were to even massage the road layout here and just see what would individual parcels. Well, I think we've tried to take advantage of not being constrained by those exact setbacks to fit parking in the way that is, again, with the desired model that we had laid out. But certainly, I think before we file any sort of formal special permit application here, we will have gone through that exercise and be in a position to speak to its positives and detriments and how that led to what our final layout is.
And just two follow-ups then. So, I mean, one, the PERD would allow, I think it was 3,300 square feet for a lot. So it's a very tiny little lot. We're not saying like
correct
giant lot that you have to take care of. But just practically, Carolyn, so I hear what you're saying about ADU and that maybe being a significant stretch for people that may own this, but how do you handle now, or what do you see people do now if I want to get a swing set, or if I want to have a little patio and put my grill out on it, or, what are the conditions that folks operate under as the owner of the home, but not necessarily the owner of the land?
So a lot of it has to do with the work that we do with homeowners prior. As soon as they're selected, they go through financial education, they go through coaching, they go through training on how to be a part of a homeowners association, what roles do you play, how do you make decisions, conflict resolution, mediation, like all of that. So in the early stages of designing the rules that they are going to live by, we have these discussions about, our dogs allowed, our cats allowed, our trampolines are allowed. And they always vote no on the trampolines because I have somebody that comes in and talks to them about insurance. So we go through all of those things so that they feel that they have a voice in where they're going to live, and you uphold rules that you help make. So we go through that. And then like in our 6-unit development in Pittsfield, we have privacy fences between the units. And then within that area, that's where their barbecue grills are. That's where they had a discussion the other day because one of the homeowners wants to have a garden that grows up a hill. And that's technically common ground. So he just went and had everybody come together, looked at it. They said, yeah, sure, that's fine. And then he's like, great, I'm going to grow enough vegetables for everybody. So that doesn't always work out perfectly like that, but it usually does. And in the case with like, would there be a swing set in that common area? Those are some of the questions that they would, we're asking them, would you like a gazebo there so that you can have outdoor picnics? So we go through a whole, I'm going to call it visioning process with them so that they are making those decisions for themselves early, in the early days. And they also make the decisions around what if somebody isn't following the rules that we agreed to? How is that going to be handled?
Okay.
So we do a lot of work with helping people learn how to make decisions and making decisions for themselves. And then how does that work in collective collective ways. And we learned that a lot over the course of our 30 years. In the early days, we didn't do all of that.
Mhm.
And that's why oftentimes I'm still going over and being the tiebreaker on something.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you so much. We're learning a lot tonight. Board members, do you have other questions? Comments, thoughts, objections? Okay. I see Eileen has her hand raised. Eileen, is that a legacy hand raising or do you have a question? I think Chris has got you ready to be unmuted if you want to. Is it *6, Chris? To unmute.
*6 on your phone, I mean. Yep, go
I
ahead.
don't know why my hand was up. I'll blame the cat.
Oh, okay. Always blame the cat.
We need a,
Yes.
we need a paw.
They're sleeping in the other room,
I
but
don't know
that's besides the point. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, well,
I think Fred's hand is up.
oh, Fred, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
No, I don't know if it's important or not, but I did want to get back to the issue of affordability that Jeremy raised, and it's a very, very good one. And one of the points that we've investigated is because there's a covenant, if you will, about how you can resell this property, that it is going to be perpetually affordable. It reduces the appraisal value of the real estate and therefore the amount of real estate taxes that each homeowner has to pay. So that there is that component of, and we've confirmed that with the assessor
Okay,
in town. There's that component there. It's not easy. I mean, Great Barrington taxes are incredibly high, as everybody here knows, among other things. And it's not easy to put all this thing together to make it fit into this affordability model.
okay, thank you for that consideration. All right, Chris, what's the next step?
Well, I think the trust and Habitat and White Engineering will have a chat about what we've heard tonight and see if we can't incorporate or at least understand and tease out some of these comments and balance them again with the reality of the sales, marketing, and neighborhood acceptance on Carolyn's side, and the reality of the site characteristics on Brent's engineering side. So we'll see what we can come up with, and I think we'll just try to keep you informed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Could I add
Thank you.
a quick thing?
Yes, Jonathan?
Which is, I think it's a mistake to preclude any possibility of future expansion. Again, coming back to how difficult it is to find any place to put affordable housing. And I think that what you're dealing with in the neighborhood is a fear of the unknown. And if you actually created a clustered community where people were very happy and they were actually neighborly and they talked to each other and everything, then the fear would go away. So what you've done here is preclude it, and I think that's a mistake.
Thank you, Jonathan.
All right, Fred and Brent and Carolyn and Aaron, thank you so much for your time. It's
Thank you
been-
for your time for
Thank
us.
you all for
Brandy,
having us.
I wanted also just to
Oh,
thank Carolyn for
parting
her
thought.
work.
yeah,
Yeah, just thank Carolyn for her work, and Fred too. You know, he's one of us to a certain degree, doing this on his own dime, despite all of the comments and my own sort of personal feeling towards the project. I appreciate the work that you're doing, because in the end, you are providing some housing to people who need it the most. I just wanted to make that clear from my perspective, my point of view.
Thank you very much. Good night, everybody. Enjoy
great.
the
Good
weekend.
night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Next item on our agenda is item 4, driveway regulations, a discussion of the criteria where more than 2 driveways might be allowed per lot. Chris circulated some draft language that Jonathan put together. Thank you, Jonathan. And so maybe Chris, you could share that on screen if possible.
Sure, and just a reminder, as I mentioned in my email to the board, currently as I search for my own copy, currently the driveway regulations in chapter 153 of the town code allow for only up to two curb cuts per lot. And more than two are only allowed in extraordinary circumstances. And as Jonathan has looked at some areas, he thinks that there may be extraordinary circumstances that should be borne in mind, and that could in fact make larger lots more developable, adding units, which is.
Did you find it? Do you want me to share? I have it up.
There it is.
Okay.
1 second.
Yeah, it's
So
a clear necessity, I think, is the language that is incredibly clear, right, Jonathan?
Yeah, so that's where I think Jonathan has brought it up in that context before of encouraging people to be able to build on their lots to what zoning actually allows. Let's see. Okay, so on screen is in the black text is the existing code, and Jonathan's proposed additions there in red. That's pretty much it.
So that's it. It's pretty straightforward. Malcolm, did you have a comment?
Yeah. What's the mechanism for getting more than two driveways? Is it just if I say I want more than two because it's a necessity to me? Or is there a special permit that is required, or?
No, there's no clear mechanism. This is just a select board permit and the select board relies on recommendations of staff, primarily planning, police, highway, professional staff about where driveways should be located and whether they're acceptable.
So Chris, just to follow on Malcolm.
The select board has not been asked to, the select board has been asked to put more than two driveways on a property, but a case has never been made about clear necessity, why a third driveway is needed, nor has staff been asked to tease that out.
And has the select board approved the
Not to my knowledge.
For more than?
There was a request, it was not allowed.
So just going back to the process question that Malcolm was getting at, so there's not an application for new curb cut or anything that.
Oh, no, there's an application for
Okay.
curb cuts. There's not a process to determine what is a clear necessity for a third.
Okay. So if I want to put in a third curb cut, I come in and I fill out my application, and then I give it to staff in the building or planning department, and
Staff
it goes
would review it, and
Yeah.
the select board would ultimately review it. And
Yeah.
unless some sort of clear necessity was presented, staff's recommendation would be there are already two curb cuts. You cannot have a third unless there's a clear necessity. And that's what the select board would see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, Jonathan, the point you're trying to make is to provide some parameters for clear necessity.
I'm just suggesting that it might be helpful in considering that, because I'm unaware of them ever having granted a third driveway. And I can think of lots of positions, lots of parcels where you need a third curb cut in order to build housing or whatever. And what do? You leave it undeveloped?
Yeah, I see what you added in terms of, additional frontage. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I was
And maybe
curious.
10% isn't the right number. I don't know
Yeah,
what the right
I hear
number
what
is.
you're saying, but put a numeric quantity on it. That's consistent with other zoning parameters that we might consider as a criteria. But where an additional driveway would facilitate the development of new housing, Does that feel a little open-ended? Like, should that be better defined if this is the direction we're going?
Well, that
Like-
was coming from my personal situation where I own a lot with a circular driveway.
Mhm,
It's got 319 feet of frontage,
mhm,
a single family house. There is a place where I would consider building possibly a single or a two family
mhm,
for rental purposes. But I can't do it because I can't access it.
mhm.
And it would sit right on the road.
The
And you
existing
couldn't do
existing
a
driveways couldn't be used to access it because of the
con-
topography of the lot or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Yeah, and you'd have to go through the floodplain and it'd be a 250-foot driveway, as opposed to a turnout. It doesn't make any sense.
And so in that case, because I was thinking of this in terms of like physical criteria that would limit, you have a very large lot or a long and skinny lot that has a lot of frontage, and there's some sort of physical feature, like you said, like a floodplain, like a wetland, that would restrict the ability to use your two existing curb cuts if you were a house with a circular drive. So is that better to say than just to facilitate the development of new housing?
Well, I think everything we've done as a planning board over the last probably 10 years has been to facilitate the development of new houses.
Mhm.
So,
Pedro, what you got your hand raised? What do you have to add?
Yeah, I kind of have like to make a point of argument and to sort of flip what you're saying, Brandy, where I can see number two as expressing a clear necessity, but I'm not sure how number one does. So if John can explain how a legal a frontage that exceeds a zoning minimum expresses a clear necessity.
I'm just saying that that's something that should be taken into consideration. If and it's going to vary. I mean, obviously, if you have 50 feet of frontage, having another 5 feet isn't going to make any difference. But if you have,
Mike, I get that
200
part.
feet of frontage and you have another 150 feet,
Yeah. No, I get that, but again, it's about that clear necessity language. I'm not sure that.
So
You can invent. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, I do hear what you're saying. So that's a good point, because I think
It's just language. It's not the
sentiment.
sentiment.
We're not trying to define clear necessity. We're just trying to give criteria that would lead to a clear necessity.
And there may be other.
Yeah.
This is Chris. I don't know how far into the weeds you want to get on this, but I guess if the board thinks that this is something we should look at and would like to have staff take a crack at what this might look like, this provides a starting point and we can come back to you, or you can debate it here tonight and wordsmith it.
I'm fine with your approach, Chris, but I think physical characteristics should come into play. If there was some geographic limitation, and I think an example, although not a perfect example, is the shared driveway that we approved on Division Street, where it would have been nice that if the shared driveway could have been on the opposite side of the property, but there was a resource area there, so there were wetlands, and it physically couldn't go there. So, physical site characteristics may create that necessity, because you couldn't use the existing infrastructure of other curb cuts to access the buildable portion of your property.
It seems to me that the clear necessity would come in when there is a portion of an existing lot that is, you can add an ADU, or to use Jonathan's example, which I think is perfect. You can add an ADU or another unit, but you can't get there. So the necessity would be that unit, which is by right in this case, you need to be able to access it.
Another thought I had that might be an example is, in many of our neighborhoods where you have a corner lot, and so maybe you have a deep portion of the lot that could be buildable, but you already have two curb cuts, and you wouldn't want to go through, the backyard for your 2-family unit that's fronting on the first street. You want to have a third curb cut so you could put your ADU in.
You wouldn't want to, but how is that a clear necessity? I think that's something we could talk about.
Sure. Okay.
Um,
Malcolm.
yeah, I'm kind of hung up on the word necessity, actually.
Well, the black text is in the code already, so
Which can be,
but if we're going to change the code, let's change the code. I mean, I think we're talking about a clear benefit, not a clear necessity.
yeah, that's a good point.
What's a necessity? A necessity to whom? I mean, I think it should state what is the clear benefit to the town or clear benefit to the homeowners. Who are we, who's it benefiting?
So in terms of process, I think Chris sent us a little summary that this would be a select board item if they were wanting to take it up. And so we would be, if we were taking this on, we would take it on in terms of making a recommendation to select board. Is that correct, Chris?
Yes, that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and I agree with Jonathan. I mean, it seems to me that if having an additional driveway would facilitate development of new housing, that's something that should be considered, but maybe that's not a necessity.
Pedro, is your hand up newly?
I like the benefit. I think that's a good word change.
Yeah,
And it
Pedro,
should benefit the town.
yeah. Should be a clear benefit of the town, to the town.
trying again to give Pedro airtime.
Sorry. Go ahead, Pedro.
Yeah, that's that's what I was going to suggest as well, is that the black portion of this text just makes the whole thing really complicated or really nonsensical to a certain degree. Now, who benefits from this thing? I mean, I don't really know. Does it really matter? I mean, maybe you guys can educate me a little bit about what the downsides are to having more than one curb cut on your drive. What I'd prefer to see is, some language that says something to the effect of, more than 2 driveways can be allowed on your property, if you have certain things or if you're trying to accomplish certain things.
Right. That's good.
And and I agree, if benefit is a word that goes in there, then so be it.
Great.
Chris, do you have enough to work with there, or staff has
Sure.
enough to work with? Okay. All right, great.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Moving on then to item 5, zoning strategies to increase housing opportunities. We don't have anything specific to discuss here, right, Chris?
I don't have anything new for you. It's in my lap to take what we discussed last time, including the site plan review criteria and the performance standards, which Malcolm summarized. Site plan review criteria, where it applies, and some of the instances where we might need more objective standards. And Pedro took a crack at my initial draft and added some additional design standards language at the last meeting. So I haven't yet incorporated all of that. That's in, I think, my lap to do. And that will help us with items 5A and 5B on the agenda tonight. So maybe we can take that up next time.
Okay, that sounds
Then
good.
5C is alternative residential types, including dormitories and shared living arrangements. Been doing some research, don't have anything to share with you yet on that. I think next time we meet, we could have Chris Brown from Berkshire Regional come and join us again. He's the one who gave us that presentation in June or July that's rolling down this track. And maybe he can wrap up some of his research and talk a little bit more about these as well.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good. I guess it's not really a zoning strategy to increase housing opportunities, but maybe it is. where are we at in terms of those Stockbridge Road zoning change?
We can bring it back to you at an upcoming meeting, take it up where we left off.
Yeah,
Refresh everybody's memory.
I'd like to not lose sight of that.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we'll sort of switch back to focusing on zoning strategies at the next meeting. Unless you tell us in your town planners report that we've got like ginormous applications that we're gonna need to review for that meeting.
Well, we will have a few things that I don't think they're ginormous. Next time, there is let's see, there's an application to modify the cellular tower at 425 Stockbridge Road. I don't think it's the tower. I think it's the wireless equipment.
Mm-hmm.
That per section 9.3.11 of the bylaw, the planning board has the opportunity to comment on that before a building permit is issued. So it's really just a review and comment. And then
Are they adding another carrier or
no, I think they're modifying existing equipment.
okay, they're not
John-
making the tower taller or anything?
No. And I think there's a certain threshold under federal law. If the tower is not made taller, if there's not more panels, et cetera, then it's essentially the building permit must issue. But in our zoning bylaw, we also have that period of review for both the select board and planning board. So that's what that is. And
Jonathan, oh, go ahead.
do you want me to move on?
I'll bring it up under issues and concerns.
We will have opportunity to review a special permit application to the zoning board of appeals to modify a non-conforming single unit residential home.
Where is that?
It's on Christian Hill Road. Then we can have Chris come and do the housing wrap up. We can do the Stockbridge Road and these other items under tonight's agenda 5.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Mhm.
All right, so we skipped over board subcommittee updates and issues and
Freddie,
concerns. Yes.
Can I just say one thing before we move up on here about item 5?
Oh, sure.
I mean, that item 5C,
Mm-hmm.
we might be able to take care of it by incorporating into the zoning bylaw a term that's defined in the building code. It's called congregate living.
Mm-hmm.
That is defined as sleeping units with shared facilities.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of coming up with a bunch of different types of
Right.
situations, that general term, which is in the building code,
Mm-hmm.
might do the trick.
Okay.
Perfect.
Have you sent that to Chris for inclusion, like as a addition to the definition section?
No, I did not. And there's also a definition for lodging house, which is basically the same as congregate living, except that it requires one permanent member. So basically like short-term rental, for example, something like that.
Yeah.
So the only reason I bring this up is because, again, it's in the table of uses. It's
Yeah.
not defined in the bylaw. And I really would like to address those things, the tourist home for transient guests, the lodging home at some point.
So
'Cause I do-
Congregate living.
From,
I like that.
from my point of view, it's an inconsistency in the bylaw that we need to clarify.
sure. So Chris, could you add a D, like definitions and table of use review?
That sounds good. Pedro, can we talk before that? And you can send me this definition, and I want to understand your what your thinking is with the tourist home and lodging house conundrum. Thanks.
Pretty simple.
All right, board and subcommittee updates, issues and concerns. Pedro.
Well, the only thing I've been thinking about lately is who's tonic water. I ran into Denise Forbes at the grocery store the other day, and she showed me some samples of her bathtub water and her drinking water, and it's abominable. And it struck me that being a board that is, for the most part, is partly responsible for economic development in town, I think it just behooves us to have some kind of say or some kind of involvement in what happens to that situation up there. because, frankly, as an example, we're looking for new office space, and there's likely no way that I'm going to go to Housatonic, right? So anyway, I was thinking maybe we can, similar to what the health department did, maybe we can have a letter and also have updates from the select board regarding what's happening with Housatonic water. Just feels like, we need to get involved in this thing somehow or other, or at least to be informed of what's going on up there.
In terms of its limitation on development opportunities, I agree with you 1,000%. It's significant.
And housing. I mean, the
no,
residents of Housatonic, to a certain degree, haven't been able to take advantage of that.
And the cost burden they're carrying in terms of the number of people buying bottled water and using that bottled water for toothbrushing and cooking, and in addition to drinking. So yeah, I think that's valid. I think I'd want to try and frame it in terms of, where our normal jurisdiction lies. There's health department's going to focus on health, and select boards focusing on other issues, I'm sure. So let's talk about that. Malcolm?
I agree, but I'd like that we need to be cautious. I mean, we can't make a judgment on something we don't know anything about. And we really haven't done any research into what the situation is at Housatonic Water. And I don't know, except for public statements and what's in the newspaper. So before I think we could make any kind of judgment in terms of what Housatonic Water, the impact is, we would really need to we need to get facts and evidence before us. And it seems to me that might be redundant over what other people and other bodies are doing to try to correct what's a bad situation. I don't think we can do anything to correct the situation, frankly, except maybe raise our voice.
And
that's what I'm
thing.
suggesting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel comfortable raising my voice without knowing.
But that's what I'm asking for, just as the health department is asking, is for updates on what's happening there, so we know what's going on there.
So Chris, can you clarify for me? I believe there's a fair amount of material regarding Housatonic Water on the town's website, correct? There've been a number of different types of studies completed, doing condition assessment, and
there is, it's either on the town manager's page or the select board's page. There's information about the water company.
Okay. I'm sorry. So that was an issue or concern. So thank you, Pedro, for bringing that up, and Malcolm for adding to that discussion. Committee updates, Pedro? Any board or committee updates?
I'm not on any committees at the present moment,
okay,
except
Malcolm.
for BRPC.
Board or committee update? For you, Malcolm, any board or committee updates?
Yeah, well, I mean, we were supposed to have a housing subcommittee meeting on Tuesday, but because it was election day, we were informed that is not going to happen. So it's been pushed back. So.
Okay. All right. We'll look forward to hearing what the update is when it happens.
Brandy,
Jonathan?
Just real quick, it's on the select board webpage. There's a whole sort of timeline of events concerning Housatonic Water on there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Jonathan, board or committee updates?
No, nothing.
Okay. Jeremy, board or committee updates? Mr. CPC?
Yeah, so we have our public hearing for the current cycle's CPA plan coming up next week, Thursday, the 15th. I believe it's 5:30. Chris, is that 5:30 as normal? That's what
I think so.
That's what I have it on my calendar, but after tonight, I'm like, oops. So yeah, that, and then just the issue of concern, and I don't know if it's directly our purview, but in the planning board's capacity in recommending roads, does that also, do sidewalks also come into that? And where I'm going with this is I wonder if we can put it on future agenda to have a discussion about Housatonic to Route 7 sidewalk for recommendation to the select board.
I think
get-
Chris did a sidewalk survey a couple of years ago, right, Chris? And you've been working from that to try and prioritize connections?
Yeah.
Who's the tonic to, wait, who's the tonic to Route 7? You mean go over Monument Mountain? What are you talking about?
No,
I mean 41.
so 183, so downtown Housatonic along 183 to Route 7, where 183 splits off of Route 7. So that's not over Monument Mountain, it's before Monument Mountain. But we can, but I'm wondering if we can just put it on an agenda to talk about. And more, this is just how to get it high on the town's priority list. Because I know it's on the list, but.
Okay.
Jeremy, did you were you able to ask anybody about whether or not a tree planting plan would qualify for CPA funds?
Oh. No, but yeah, let me
No, you weren't able to ask, or no, it won't.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I wouldn't say I wasn't able to ask. I would say I didn't ask. So I will.
I found out, by the way, that the engineers at McDonald's are going to scratch 2 of those Japanese trees. They're still going to plant 2 of them, but they're going to scratch 2 of them and plant elms instead of them.
Oh, okay, good. All right, sounds good. And I don't have any board or committee updates either at this point in time. So do we have any citizens who'd like to speak? Our next item is citizen speak. If so, just raise your hand. All right, Chris, we got Bill Shine.
Okay.
Hi, Bill.
Hey, everybody. Just a quick administrative request that I think I've run past a couple of you about opportunity to get documents and things that are being considered at meetings in advance, perhaps, in the way the select board does a packet, or in whatever way you think would make it easier than me or others pestering you the way we do.
Okay, thanks, Bill. I know a lot of our materials in our quote unquote packets are drawings, and so sometimes we just get links to Dropboxes because of the file size. It's not as emailable.
I'll add you to the list, Bill. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's just me, so it takes me a while to do packets. So usually what I do is I email the board materials and I'll just forward that email to people who are interested. I typically I try to remember to send it to the newsletter, but I'll add you as well.
That'd be great. Super. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there's just Bill and Eileen who've toughed it out with us this evening. Eileen, any questions? All right, I don't see Eileen raising her hand again, and the cat must be behaving. So we'll go ahead then, and we'll adjourn at 8:43. Everyone, thank you so much. We'll do regular time next meeting. Everybody, sound good?
One thing is, what about public meetings?
Oh,
Go back.
yeah, in-person meetings, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably be able to go back to in person very, very soon. In being able to, in terms of the technology that we have, so we'll always offer a hybrid option. The board or whomever's comfortable can be in person. But the meeting room should be
ready in a couple
all the
weeks.
kinks should be out of it soon. Maybe even for the next meeting. So we'll
or tentatively October.
Yeah, we'll do it as soon as we're comfortable. Not every board will be able to offer a hybrid option. We will be able to, and the boards that I help administer, just, I'll be driving the ship. So, but some boards, Malcolm, for example, historical, unless you're comfortable driving a hybrid ship, you could just meet in person if you want, or you could meet in a hybrid fashion if you choose. So
since it's just us and Eileen, that's probably okay.
Yeah. So I think it's gonna be, yeah, depending on the board and the audience that they anticipate and the staff resource that they do or don't have.
I want to consider in terms of public participation too, because anecdotally, I don't have any data to back this up. And I don't know, Chris, if you can keep track or you get a report on attendance for our meetings, but it seems like our meetings are more accessible for people to participate in being online.
Tonight was much easier, for example, for Habitat to be here, for our
Yeah.
engineer to be here. I mean, you know,
Right.
as an engineer, it's easier to not travel 3 hours to a meeting. It gets done at 9
You
o'clock.
kidding? I love that stuff.
So it does make it easier from a staff point of view and a consultant point of view, that's for
Right.
sure. And I agree from a public point of view, I think participation is higher in a hybrid format.
Not that I don't want to see all of you in person. You know, we'll get back to like in-person meetings just in time for winter snowstorms.
Yeah, but that's the advantage of doing hybrid, that, you know, you can meet in person if you are able and comfortable, or
Okay.
if you can't, we're, you know, the governor's orders still allow for, you know, there to not have to be a quorum of the board in the room, so
Okay.
Oh,
it's still
and
possible.
so does that mean we can go to hybrid drinks?
Yeah,
After?
exactly.
I've done those. They're no fun. They're no fun at all. Okay. Do I have to adjourn again?
I have a question just about the hybrid meetings. What is the quality going to be like for people that are, some of the hybrid meetings that I've been in, it's really difficult to hear the group that's present. And it's very easy to hear the other people that are remote.
It's going to be really important for whomever's chairing the meeting and driving the ship to ensure everybody, you know, mutes when they need to mute, speaks up when they need to, you know, everybody's recognized in a very methodical fashion. I think will help a great deal.
Are we going to have?
No, I was just going to say, Jeremy, just you have to, as the chairperson, you have to be very like cognizant of the people that are if you're in the room, you have to be cognizant of the people that are remote, because they can easily get forgotten about. So that's to Chris's point. You have to kind of know who's where and make sure you're actively trying to engage them. And if they decline to participate, that's fine. They just maybe want to listen, but you have to actively engage.
Will the board members and the person at the podium have devices in front of them? Or are we just going to have some general one camera on the board? And I'm wondering, because if you have devices in front of you, I think it's much easier for the public to, I mean, we'd still have to be good about muting ourselves and unmuting ourselves, which might be hard when we're, but I wonder about that. Because
No, the way it will work is there'll be 1 or 2 devices on the table that take audio and pictures of people in the room. And there's a large screen in the room for us to see and interact with people who are attending remotely.
Like the new world.
Great. I look forward to it.
Yeah, we'll probably need training on it or something.
And Chris, is that getting tested out, like in town, to see how it works for people?
Yes, that's why
we're not doing it yet.
Yeah, we're working out the kinks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The launch is, you know, it's like NASA here.
Can't have any leaky O-rings.
Delays.
All right, great. Chris, thank you so much. Kim, thank you so much. Board members, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Thank
Hope
you,
everybody has a
Brandy.
good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.